In this lesson, we're going to be going over some examples where we use the compound interest formula. And that formula was that the accumulated amount after a certain amount of time is going to be equal to the principal amount, that is the amount that was initially invested or initially borrowed, multiplied by 1 plus our interest rate, and this is our interest rate expressed as a decimal, and that will all be to the power of n, where n is the number of years. And if you're not familiar with this formula, I definitely suggest that you refer back to our last video where we discussed exactly how we derive this formula and went over the basis of that in a lot more detail. So let's start out with an example. Let's say I invested 10,000 Rand in a savings account that pays 8% compound interest per annum. That means per year. How much will I have after 4 years? So I'm starting out with 10,000 Rand. That is going to be the principal amount. That is the initial amount that is going to be invested into this special savings account that is going to pay compound interest at an 8% interest rate per year. And the question is asking how much you are going to have in that account after 4 years of earning 8% compound interest per year. So let's write down what we already know. We know that our principal is going to be 10,000 Rand. That is the initial amount that we invested. We know that our interest rate is going to be 8%. So 8% expressed as a decimal is going to be 0.08. We know that our n, our number of years, is 4 years. And our A is what we need to determine in this question. That is the amount that we will have accumulated after those 4 years, paying 8% per year compound interest on that initial principal. So A is what we are trying to figure out in this question. So I'm going to scroll down here, and now let's plug in these values into our compound interest formula. So we know that that was that A is equal to P times 1 plus I all to the power of n. So A is going to be equal to our principal, which was 10,000, multiplied by 1 plus 0.08. That is going to be raised to the power of 4 because our n is 4. So that is going to be the same thing as 10,000 multiplied by 1.08 to the power of 4. Now if we put this into our calculator, we are going to get 13,604.89. So in this case, we are going to have 13,604 rands and 89 cents in our account after 4 years. So we started out by putting 10,000 Rand in our account, and that account earned this extra 3,604 Rand and 89 cents in compound interest over those 4 years. And remember that it is customary in South Africa to use this comma as a decimal point, but in other parts of the world you might see this as a period. It means the same thing. So this is going to be our final answer. Let's go over another example. Let's say you borrowed 50,000 Rand at a 3% compound interest rate per annum. How much will you owe after 6 years? So in this question, we are going to be borrowing money at a compound interest rate of 3% per year. And we're being asked how much we're going to owe after 6 years of borrowing that money. So let's start out again by writing down what we know in this question. We know that our principal, that's the initial amount of money that we borrowed, is 50,000 Rand. So that is our principal amount. We know that our interest rate is going to be 3% compound interest per year. and 3% can be expressed as a decimal as 0.03. So that's what we will plug into our formula. Our n, our number of years, that is 6 years. That is how long we are keeping that money. And in this case, A is again what we are going to need to calculate. That is going to be the amount that we are going to owe after 6 years of paying this 3% compound interest rate on this principal. So now we can plug these values into our compound interest formula, which was that A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of n. So our P was 50,000 Rand. Our I was 0.03 and our N was 6 years. So this is going to be the same as 50,000 multiplied by 1.03 to the power of 6. If we plug this into our calculator, we are going to get 59,702.61. So at the end of our 6 years, we are going to owe 59,702 Rand and 61 cents. So that additional 9,702 Rand and 61 cents is going to be the interest that we paid on this 50,000 Rand principal. So this is our final answer. So that is where we will end for now, and in the next lesson we'll go over a few more examples on compound interest and using this compound interest formula to make sure that that is absolutely clear.